Welcome to Down to Astrology and Primal Girl Wellness. This is Ms. Jenny, and I am your astrologer. This is the October 2024 forecast or monthly horoscope, and the theme for this month is Ain't No Rest for the Wicked, baby. Let's take a look. Okay, so October. October 2024. So we're going to cover a couple of the highlights before we get into this, and also I just want to point out that this is going to be well, it's a special month. It's a special month. I am not a huge advocate of war, but if you've been watching the current news up until this point and watching the trends that we've been dealing with over the last 10, 15 years, one of the things that we know is that there's an entire group and faction of people who are absolutely determined to drag us backward in time and bring on the end of the earth, because they've all got this nihilistic fantasy that this is it, this is the big one. And I would like to remind you guys that mass consciousness is everything, right? Character is everything, mass consciousness is everything. What you focus on, you put attention on, you give energy to. So this is why we talk about like visualization and manifestation, and your thoughts create reality, and the mind-body connection. Everything begins with your consciousness. So what you're willing to believe and support with your thoughts, give your attention to, put your energy into mentally, right? Especially with any amount of faith or confidence. These are the things that you will start magnetizing and growing and expanding and drawing to yourself. Now, I don't want to sound really weird here, but think about the irony or coincidence that a lot of the natural disasters that we've been seeing over the last 20 years or so are hitting along major religious concentrated areas. Right here in the United States, the Bible Belt's been getting walloped with natural disasters, worse than ever before for quite some time now. Haiti was also a big religious hotspot, and we saw what happened to Haiti many years ago. Which isn't to say that Haitians are bad. So for those of you who adopt that kind of thinking, I don't even know why you're on this channel, but you know what I'm saying, right? So the thing about it is when you have entire groups of people that are focused on specific things, all in agreement about what this thing shall be, right? They're sending a tremendous amount of energy to it. Those of you who practice white magic or any type of alternate spiritual practices, you understand exactly what I'm talking about. Group think, group mentality, mass consciousness has a tremendous amount of power. Now, here's what's important to understand about that. We have been shifting away. We are evolving. You can't stop progress. We are evolving. We're heading into the right direction. But people who have control and power, institutions that have control and power, are loath to give that up, right? Nobody wants to give up their comfort and security. They definitely don't want to give up their power. Okay? So, as a result of that, we've had small pockets of people who've enjoyed the luxuries and benefits of the power and control in situations that we're trying to move away from, literally trying to claw it back away from us before they lose complete grasp on it. So the dinosaurs are literally recognizing that they're about to become extinct, and they've been in a panic for quite some time now. And now this year we've been in the last throes of the panicked response of old world nonsense trying to cling and claw back any vestige of control over these things to take us backward to a time where they were in power and control. They're losing that because evolution must occur whether you like it or not. So the face or disguise of many of these things comes under this nihilistic or Zionist belief. I mean, pick the thing, but it's all about the world is coming to an end because we're all wicked people, even the innocent among us, and we're completely justified in what we're doing, and if you step back a little bit more and take a look, it's all about trying to stop progress from happening, right? You can't stop evolution. You adapt or you die. So here's where we're at with October. So go back and look at all this stuff happening up until now. If you're old enough to have lived through some of this and remember it clearly, like you'll know what I'm talking about. Like if you step back and look at it, it's obvious, as the nose on your face obvious, this trend we've been watching. So October seems to be one of those dicey, spicy, sketchy, like, oh my God, kind of months. It's really going to put a thumbtack in the timeline of history in terms of which way we need to go to keep moving past this. It will not be easy. Now, I'm not saying this to panic you. There's some really good stuff here. So here's, again, what I want you to think about. Mass consciousness, mass consciousness, mass consciousness, your thoughts, what you are willing to believe as a potential outcome on the other side of this. So while we're going through everything we're going to go through in October, right, I want you to continue putting your thoughts on the other side of this and where you want this outcome to be. All right. So if you really are willing to accept and buy into and feed into this nihilistic, Zionistic fantasy that the world is coming to an end, and there can only be one religion and all that horse hockey. Okay. Again, I don't know why you're on this channel, but that's literally not going to help. We need to focus on, and we need to refute and literally talk people off the damn psychological ledge that this is just part of change. Evolution is happening. We can't go backward. We can't go back in time. And the people who are fighting it the hardest won't let go because they're going to lose all the power and comfort and luxuries and privileges that they had from the way the world used to be. So we're going to focus on where the world needs to be on the other side of this. Okay, you are going to use your mind and throw your attention and energy and focus onto the best possible outcome for all of us. Okay, that does not involve the world ending or more shootings and fighting and all sorts of violence. And you know what I'm talking about. Focus on that. So if you're familiar with motorcycle riding, remember what they taught you in motorcycle riding school, right? Don't focus on the tree branch or the pothole ahead of you. Don't focus on the thing you're trying to avoid. You focus on the piece of road just ahead of that. You are aware of the problem in front of you, but your focus always includes and remains on the smooth spot on the other side of that. Because if the only thing you're looking at is the thing you're trying to avoid, that's where your motorcycle is going to end up with you on it, or off of it, as the case may be. Same thing here. So, yay team. All right, now let's take a look at the highlights for the month. So this month we're carrying an eclipse at 10 Libra. It will be conjunct the fixed star Vindemiatrix, which is kind of an interesting fixed star. I've got a little story about that. Jupiter will station retrograde. So our big grandpapa Jupiter will be pulling back some of his blessings and making us do the hard work on our own this time without any assistance. Pluto will be stationing direct, literally on top of it at the same time. Now, Pluto, we know, is at the 29th degree. This is the cleanup crew, okay? And Pluto's now going direct and it's finishing its job. So it's hauling butt. It's hauling stuff out of the yard. So with Jupiter going retrograde and Pluto stationing direct at the same time, and these are both big social outer world planets, we got some interesting stuff that's going to be happening with that. The thing I want to just make a note, remember, outer planets, like Pluto, we feel them well ahead of their actual station. So, because Pluto stations at the end of the month, all month long, this Jupiter station retrograde and this Pluto station direct, we're going to be feeling these two working in tandem as they come to their official moment of glory at the end of the month. So we're feeling it at the very beginning, and with this eclipse at the very beginning of the month, we're definitely feeling it the first week of October. Also, of note, Uranus continues to be conjunct the fixed star Algol all month long, well into I think next month too. But this particular month, because we've got so much stuff going on at the same time, this really adds some like hot pepper to the pot for this. Good Lord. Now, and just a reminder, Algol, well, it symbolizes beheadings and people losing their minds and crazy people and blah, violence, yada. Algol is also the star, fixed star that represents one of the many faces of the goddess, because it represents Medusa. And the Medusa story is not about, evil women turning men to stone. The Medusa story is about sexual assault, surviving sexual assault, and moving on and taking this experience to transform you into a champion and protector of other people. So go back and reread that Medusa story again and look at it through the lens of a rape survivor, and it will all make sense. And there's a whole, I'll put a link at the end, there's a whole video about Algol and the symbolism of Medusa's stories and that thing. Anyway, so there's that. And while Uranus is conjunct that beautiful fixed star Algol, that powerful fixed star Algol, it will also be in the anti-sea of Vulcanus. Now, Vulcanus is a transneptunian that has a lot to do with machines, weaponry, forged steel, dirty, hot labor work, laborers, craftsmen, skilled labor. Vulcanus has a lot to do with power, strength, and might, brute strength. So Uranus with Algol and Vulcanus all month long, while we've got the eclipse and Jupiter and Pluto all being extremely active this month, indicates a very highly militarized month. This does not mean we're going into World War III, but it does mean that the saber rattling has now moved into saber and missile production. So keep an eye on that. This is a tense month. This is a very, very tense month, very militarized. So again, mass consciousness, focus on where we need to be on the other side of this. We know this is the problem. We're riding our motorcycle. We know this is the problem in front of us, but our focus needs to include and be on the smooth road on the other side of the problem. Don't focus on the problem alone. Focus on where you want to be. All right. Okay. Now let's take a look at the. Okay, so October 2nd, give or take a day or a few hours, depending where you are on the planet, what time of day or night it's happening where you're at. We have the eclipse, a new moon eclipse at 10 Libra. Now, this new moon eclipse has some interesting signatures. The first being that Mercury's combust, and Mercury combust eclipse is really going to foul up communications. There's lots of misunderstandings, maybe even when it comes to communication systems and devices. We can expect some hinky stuff happening. It's not good. It's not good. Planets that are combust the sun are literally weakened, significantly weakened and impaired in their ability to function like they're supposed to. Mercury rules travel, communications, schedules, communication devices, technologies like phones and computers, GPS, and it's all just all kinds of afoul at the time of this eclipse. And eclipses are like super moons. So this is like a super new moon, which pretty much blacks out everything, right? Like putting the blackout curtains in your window. And it's hiding Mercury at the same time. So this first week, we can expect some shaky developments. Now, with that said, because it just gets better from here, the eclipse will also be conjuncting a very interesting fixed star called Vindemiatrix, or also nicknamed the Widowmaker. Do not panic, do not panic, do not panic. While this is a highly militarized month, and certainly war has broken out in many places across the world, the globe, and very highly militarized things have been taking place over the last 5 or 6 years, maybe 10 years, because this has all been ramping up in different parts of the globe. Like now we're starting to get into like concentrated areas that are really dangerous because of the technology that is available to them, okay, and or the alliances available to them. So hearing the word Widowmaker doesn't sound good, but do not panic, because Vindemiatrix also has other applications. I'll tell you some stories. Okay, while this is happening, this particular new moon eclipse is made even more uncomfortable because it is simultaneously squaring. Oh, let me get my teaching pen here. Simultaneously squaring Mars, Hades, and Kronos right here. So this is the big signature for this eclipse. This fixed star is one thing, and the Mercury combust is one thing. I mean, those are minor details at this point, compared to this big hunk and square, two of all the things we don't want it to be square to, Mars, Hades, and Kronos. So the new moon squaring Mars is challenging enough because that promises, one, action. Deliberate, quick, forceful action. So in your personal life, you may find you've got to be quick on your feet and make some snap decisions or fast decisions right now. Let's go. It's go time. Go, go, go. Be aware that this is a possibility. So be gentle with each other. None of these decisions are necessarily going to be easy, and not a lot of people make really good decisions in a hurry. So keep that in mind when you find yourself faced with situations where you've got to do something, anything other than stand there and be in someone's way. So there's that. The other is that Mars is hooked up to Kronos and Hades, these transneptunians, and these are some interesting transneptunians. Now, Hades and Kronos have been traveling together like a team for a while now. They're only now just starting to separate and let each other go off to do their own things. Hades, the transneptunian, has a lot to do with the criminal underground, the underworld, illicit activity. Think P. Diddy and all the things he's being accused of and all the many nefarious characters that are involved in this and connected to it that we don't know about yet. So Hades is all the muck and stuff underneath the surface of polite society that we don't see. Now, interestingly enough, you should also know that Hades also has connections to medicine, right? And in all its forms, and surgery. And again, it's all the muck and guts and all the we don't see on the surface. So it's all the stuff underneath that, okay? Which also has a lot to do with corruption and power systems and entire power structures hidden from the view of the surface of society. So there's a lot going on there with Hades. Kronos is the transneptunian, known as the timekeeper. So it's like a really evolved Saturn. So with Kronos, there are a couple of things that we look for. With Kronos, one, we look for the absolute heights and magnitude of expression, like literally the gold star standard of things, right? The absolute maximum achievable quality or quantity of something. Kronos is like the top maximum upper level of anything. With Kronos and Hades together, when we talk about the criminal underground, we're talking about the potential for criminal activity and criminal players, at the absolute pinnacle of these systems and organizations. So we're not talking about the foot soldiers. We're not talking about the lower level, what by comparison they would be middle management, like we know in corporate worlds, right? And we're not talking about the big talking head peacocks like, Musk, Jesus, what a moron. Or Trump, the big flashy front man, the clown. We're talking about the people like the Wizard of Oz, right? The very, very few people at the very, very top who are basically running the show from behind the scenes. Okay, Murdoch, the newspaper guy Murdoch is another example of Kronos Hades, because up until recently we didn't know who he was, didn't even know his existence. Well, I mean, maybe you did, but most of us didn't. And what we've learned is that Murdoch has not only this news empire that he controls and controls the news feed from. So he makes the ultimate decisions about which direction he wants those news feeds to go, as we've learned since Trump went into office. But now we're also learning that Murdoch, because he's a multi-billionaire or something, right? Like he's got tons of money and tons of influence and connections because he's got all this power and influence, also is heavily involved in a whole lot of other stuff, a lot of hinky other stuff that's not for anybody's benefit but his own. And when we talk about criminal activity, it's always only for your own benefit. Nobody does any of this stuff out of the goodness of their heart and for the charity of other people. So that's that Hades Kronos conjunction that we've been dealing with all this time. Like again, right now they're starting to separate. But this month, at the first week of this month, we're looking at a lot of activity. It's really because Mars is there between them, squaring this eclipse. We're looking at a lot of stuff being literally blown out of the water and exposed. Now, by the way, ignore the houses in these charts. I had to set a chart up with sometime, anytime, so I just set them up for noon at random location. Doesn't matter. We're just focusing on the aspects. Now, Mars in Cancer sits right smack between Kronos and Hades. This is kind of like having a root canal, right? So imagine, or maybe not imagine, because it's a pretty painful thought, the process of literally drilling into the tooth, right? And right down in deep into that nerve and then pulling it all out, right? Digging in around in that soft tissue where it's sensitive and the nerve is the communicator, and ripping all that. If you've ever even had or heard about root canals, oh, Lord. So Mars, Kronos, and Hades together like this, involved in this square with a new moon eclipse, is a lot like the cosmic root canal, except the thing that we're pulling out of that soft, sensitive, tender, usually protected pulp where the nerve is. This has a lot to do with power and systems of power, but most importantly, the highest echelons of power wielding in any system or organization. So it's not the big flashy front-facing frontmen like Musk or Trump or any of those guys, right? It's not the middle management like your drug kingpins at the lower level, right? In different states or counties or countries, or even the foot soldiers. No. We're going all the way up the top with this particular aspect, right to the very, very the little man behind the curtain in The Wizard of Oz, source of power, influence, and control. That's what this aspect is showing us, and a whole lot of people are about to get yanked out from behind that curtain if they haven't already. So that's the focus. Woo! With this eclipse and this month. Yikes, right? So again, for those of you who are watching the Diddy case, again, this is not about the Roman orgy he was hosting in his house or anything like that. There's something, because of their response and how they handled this, there's much bigger fish to fry. We all know that. But this eclipse in this particular square here to Mars, Hades, and Kronos is definitely letting us know that it's bigger than we even realize. So they're after some. They're not after the big fish. They're after the freaking whales. Woo! Okay. Now, with this eclipse, things I want to draw your attention to. This eclipse, as terrifying as it is an action-oriented eclipse. Things happen under this eclipse. Kerpow, baby! Now it's go time. So the thing about it is I want you guys to look at the dispositor or the rulers of Libra and this eclipse to give us some more information about what we might expect. Because is it all that bad? Is it all for naught? So we know Libra is ruled by Venus, and it is also secondary ruler Saturn. Okay, so we look at Venus and Saturn in this chart, give us some clues as to what we might expect or what this also portends or entails. So we're going to look at the obvious one, which is Venus, and Venus is in Scorpio. And Jesus, that can't be good, right? Venus is in its fallen Scorpio. It doesn't like being in Scorpio. It's not comfortable being in Scorpio. Venus in Scorpio does a lot of good, powerful, positive things that I'm not going to get into here because I don't have a lot of time. But it is to say that for the most part, Venus is kneecapped in Scorpio. It does not like being there. It's not its natural placement, okay? Venus likes being in Taurus, not Scorpio. Venus likes being in Libra, not Scorpio. But Venus is in Scorpio. Now, here's the good news. Even though Venus is in, paranoid, it's, what's in it for me kind of, exploitive Scorpio. Whoops. Sorry, my ringtone. At the same time, let me shut that off. At the same time, it is one trining Kronos, Hades, and Mars. Okay, so that's going to give it some strength. And it's also going to give this, the ruler of the eclipse, and also these planets in square to the eclipse, some direction and also some softening. There's a way out through this. Okay, so it's not all bad. Keep that in mind because these planets are in trine. They're working well together, which means that cooperation and a solution is there. We might have to dig for it. We might have to, do some hard negotiations to get there, but it is there. So remember that in your personal life as well. No matter how dire and awful something seems, and no matter how unfair, and you're going to see a lot of that, no matter how unfair things might appear in the moment, there is a solution and a way out. It may require some compromise. It may require some hard negotiations. It may require some patience for the tables to turn, but it is there. So keep the faith. Don't let it overwhelm you. The second thing, before I get too much more into the Venus, the second thing is Saturn, which is also co-ruler of Libra. Saturn is not an ancient, it's a shared ruler for Libra. Anyway. Saturn is in Pisces, and we know Saturn in Pisces has been all about the reckoning, right? Accountability and transparency, the golden rule, right? Literally exposing people for what they are and forcing them into situations where they have to make themselves accountable for their actions or their intentions. So Saturn in Pisces, we know this is what this is about. So we can expect this eclipse to also further emphasize or be underscored by the words accountability and transparency. We've been seeing it. This active, action-oriented eclipse should be driving that point home and really bringing something to home base. If this were a baseball game, this would be the last run to the home base to win the game kind of thing. So that's good. That's actually good. The other thing that's even better about this is right here. So we have Venus, which rules this eclipse. We have Saturn, which rules this eclipse. We have Mars, which is square this eclipse. Now look at this. We got a grand trine between these three sets of planets that all disposit or rule the eclipse. That is fantastic freaking news. So again, mass consciousness, mass consciousness, mass consciousness. Don't believe the hype. Don't get lost in it. We are in a magically powerful place if we can stay the course and keep looking ahead and beyond the problem. Be aware of the problem, but look beyond it. That's your grand trine. This is what's on the other side of the problem. So this grand trine allows us a tremendous amount of luck and also ease and opportunity to produce something positive from whatever this eclipse brings us, right? So the eclipse is going to bring us a lot of noise and storms. We know that. But this grand trine with all these planets that are specifically related and connected to or ruling this eclipse gives us an out. It gives us an out. It gives us a way to get through this on to the other side safely. So keep that in mind. Now, this brings us right back to Venus, which is conjunct the transneptunian Pisces. So Poseidon it's considered the higher octave. The best description, it's a higher octave of Neptune. There are no downsides to Poseidon. It has everything to do with altruism, compassion, unconditional love, right? The spirituality at its best. At its best. None of this, the world is going to end, there can only be one religion. None of that horse hockey that has to do with ego and spiritual narcissism and vanity. Oh, the conceit. This has everything to do with the actual true practice of being a spiritual entity in a human existence. So, with Venus ruling the eclipse conjuncting Poseidon, compassion, altruism, charity, all the best things of any religion or spiritual practice that you follow, all the best things that make you a better spiritual entity, that have you and show you how to live up to being a better spiritual entity. This is what this is about. So this grand trine involving Venus and Poseidon, Saturn and Pisces, right? Similar themes there. It's all about kindness and compassion and doing the right thing. Mars, Hades, and Kronos, okay, which has a lot to do with power structures and medicine, right? And the highest possible standards available. This gives us the opportunity to cut through the noise and find a way through this. So hang in there, keep your eyes open and pay attention because it's there. Don't let any of these, oh my God, these, what is the word that I'm looking for? Oh, you know the ones are constantly the fearmongers, right? Fearmongers and catastrophe, makers, people telling you, oh, trying to get you all whipped up, right? So your eyeballs on their channel, whether it's the news or astrology, don't let these people freak you out. We're going to be okay. The solutions are there. It's not hopeless, but we've got to work for it. And the reason we have to work for it is, again, remember, Jupiter is going retrograde. Jupiter's not giving us any assist on this. We've got to do it ourselves. This is a DIY project if we want to get through this with as much intact as possible, including our sanity. Okay? Now, this particular eclipse is also interesting because this moon, this new moon eclipse, the moon is in mutual reception with Jupiter by exaltation, not rulership. So again, there's a lot of strength here and there's a lot of benefit and blessings and hope, right? The solutions and the compromises, the positive responses to whatever this eclipse brings us is there, but we're going to have to work for it because Jupiter is stationing retrograde, but it is there. Now, other things that are happening this month, Newt. I have Newt. Neptune remains in rulership, but again, Neptune's in those last degrees. This is the last chance we've got to get it right, folks. We've got to get it right. And getting it right has everything to do with rising up to Neptune, Pluto, spiritual, golden rule sort of stuff. The highest expressions of Neptune and spirituality is what is being called from us right now. Now, whether we rise up to those challenges or not, that's on us. That's our free will. But that's the evolutionary demand here. Remember, Venus conjunct Poseidon, because Poseidon is the higher octave of Neptune, is also telling us, because this rules the eclipse, is also telling us that this is where we need to go. And this week is going to drive that point home. So pay attention and get your mind right. Get your mind right. Now, other things that are happening this month that are of notable interest, the Sun and Mars are in fall, which means that the men in leadership and leadership in general, but specifically military leadership, testosterone, Mars, manly men kind of leadership, which would be the military, right, and the government, they're not making their best decisions anywhere on the globe. So the men are not in their best. They're not in their best or at their best at this point in time. You just need to know that what's going on with the boys. Also, too, there's some weakening there, weakening of confidence, because the sun rules confidence. And so does Mars. Mars rules optimism. Because if you've ever known men, testosterone makes you optimistic. So they're not in their best places right now. So I wouldn't rely too heavily on their leadership or guidance because they're still human and they're prone to foibles and failings and misjudgments. And this is going to be a month where hard, harsh, aggressive, hostile, or violent military initiatives or just initiatives are going to be at their lowest point. There's not a lot of support for it, and a lot of it may backfire. So, if they're calling for, just chest beating in war, take a couple breaths, step back, and say, yeah, wait a minute, buddy, let's think about this for a second. So, because they are not making the best decisions right now, whether they realize it or not. They're not in the strong position they think they are, and they're not looking at, because Sun and Mars are in fall, they're not looking at all their options. And every other planet in the chart is peregrine. And the last thing I just want to point out before we talk about Vindemiatrix is this. Uranus stays at the degree of Algol all month long, honey baby choo-chee pie. Algol has to do with female power, female empowerment, survival of trauma, and rising up to the challenge and transforming yourself to becoming a champion and protector of other people. Using your pain and your trauma to strengthen you and to allow you to become a different person who's even more powerful and more strong and more valuable than you ever were before. That is the lesson in Algol. And we've got this going on all month with all of this happening at the same time. So keep that in mind when you think about what to do or you find yourself in situations where you're not sure what to do or what to think. This is the theme of the month because this is the eclipse that's carrying us through. We got this going on all month long. Okay, so there's that. Now, Vindemiatrix. So there are some people who would say that Vindemiatrix is, the Widowmaker. And here's my story about Vindemiatrix and the nickname, the Widowmaker. Years ago, I knew a girl. I used to work with her. I didn't know her personally, but we worked together. So you know people's business after a while, right? So she was engaged to a young man, having been engaged once before and lost her fiance. Her fiance died before they could get married, right? Very sad, very sad. So here she was engaged again to another young man when I met her at my job. And before I left the employment there, she had to leave on bereavement leave or grief leave because this fiance also died. Now, she is not a murderer. He did not die because of anything she did. But interestingly, when you looked at her chart, she had, I think, the moon or Venus, one of her planets, one of her personal planets was conjunct the fixed star Vindemiatrix. So while she wasn't legally married, she certainly was facing basically being a widow, not once but twice. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Now, if you carry Vindemiatrix conjunct anything in your chart, do not panic. This does not guarantee that you're going to be a widow, although it still would not be a bad idea to get life insurance policies. I'm just saying. Everybody should have one, but some people more than others. Anyway. So that was interesting. But Vindemiatrix is not just about losing loved ones or romantic loved ones, right? It's not about just about losing spouses and fiancés. Vindemiatrix is also, because it's known as the Grape Gatherer, Vindemiatrix is also the fixed star that has to do with business, right? So Vindemiatrix is a business fixed star. And where you see Vindemiatrix come up, you typically see a strong business acumen or strong connections to business and business practices or business people, right? So this eclipse conjunct Vindemiatrix, I mean, this is at this point, we're looking at something that has to do with business being the focal point of the actions being taken involving Mars, Hades, and Kronos. That's concerning because we also know that it's, again, this whole month, it's about the little man behind the curtain being exposed for who he is. So keep an eye on that, my friends, and understand that this eclipse, the wheels that are turning are not about what's good for everyone. And it may or may not be about democracy, depending on where on the globe you're living, but it is very much about the people, the masses, right, versus the small few at the very, very top who benefit from slave labor. And you don't have to be unpaid to be a slave. You can be a wage slave, where they pay you just enough to keep you alive, and running on the hamster wheel, but not enough to get comfortable, educate yourself, have time to figure out what's going on around you, and get off the hamster wheel. This is what we've been dealing with since the Reagan administration here in the United States, and I don't know if it's any different in other places, but this is what we're dealing with I think, looking at this with Vindemiatrix in the mix with its eclipse. So a whole bunch of stuff's about to come blowing out in the open. Let's see what happens. And again, focus on where we need to be on the other side of the problem. Do not focus on the problem itself. All right. Now, as we're going through this, rocking and rolling, let's move on to the next lunation and see what's happening the following week. Okay, October 10th, 2024, we have a quarter moon at 17 Capricorn. Now, this particular moon is interesting, but not nearly as interesting as the eclipse or the week coming up. But this is interesting because this quarter moon is being sandwiched on either side of that date by Jupiter going retrograde on the 9th, okay, just before the quarter moon, and Pluto going direct on the 11th, just after that quarter moon. So we've got, this is a very active quarter moon, but not because of the quarter moon itself. It is because of the sandwich that we're making with Jupiter and Pluto, which we're feeling all month long. Okay, so this quarter moon, we've got the sun with moon at 17 Capricorn. Now the moon is kind of sort of conjunct Pluto. Pluto's at 29, the moon's at 17. It's a big, wide, fat orb. And normally I would not use a big, wide orb like this. I like my orbs tight and clean and neat and specific. Okay, but because Pluto is going direct, which is a major planetary movement, we're going to give it that 10-degree orb, which means that the moon and Pluto are technically conjunct as Pluto goes direct, even though it's wide. The good news is because it's a wide, fat orb, we got a lot of leeway in here, so it's not nearly as overwhelming and intense. We're feeling it, but not nearly as intensely or badly as we could. Jupiter stations direct over at 21 Gemini. Now, Jupiter will obviously be closer to the sun. The sun will be at 17. So here's Jupiter. The sun's at 17, we've got Juno at 21, Zeus at 24, and Mercury is at 24. So with this particular lunation around the 10th, Mercury has moved out from under the sun, so all the weird stuff that was going on with our cell phones and communications and schedules, all the stuff that was going haywire should have calmed down and sorted itself out by now. Interestingly, Juno, Zeus, and Mercury are together at this time during this quarter moon and absolutely pulling in this quarter moon, right? But more specifically, pulling in the benefit of Jupiter's assistance. Even though Jupiter is going retrograde, we're still getting some help here because there's a trine, so there's a trap door somewhere open we can slip out of in case of emergency. Escape this way. Okay, so Zeus, Juno, and Mercury together and Zeus represents high-level officials, right? The official officials, right? Like the president, whoever's in charge of the military for a country. I don't know what the name is called, right? The CEO, or not CEO, the owner of a company, right? Not the CEO, but the owner. Zeus represents the highest top-level executives or kings, as they were, in any given hierarchy. So not necessarily bloodline kings, but certainly kings of that particular tribe or group or, whatever the organization. Okay. Juno there has a lot to do. Interestingly, now here's something I want you guys to think about, because let's watch this, right? Juno has a lot to do with community and marriage and motherhood and wives. So I think possibly, because Juno's involved here, the women or the wives or female leaders, chieftains, right? Kings, queens, the queens will rise, may have a lot to do with what's happening right now in terms of actions being taken and resolutions being sought and found. And remember, Jupiter here is giving us, a helping hand specifically to Juno, Zeus, and Mercury. So and Jupiter in Gemini is about communication and talking, discussing, having a conversation. It's not about I'm right, you're wrong. It's about hearing what other people have to say and really listening, right? So that's going to be of key importance at this time, and certainly helping Juno, Zeus, and Mercury. And Mercury, of course, also has to do with communications. So, and Libra has also to do with diplomacy. So diplomatic actions, diplomatic things, things of this nature may come up very, very strongly at this point. So it would be nice to see some of these wives of these people get involved and actually do something other than parrot the sympathies of their husbands that are doing the wrongdoing, because they're just interested in their shopping trips and not having to look for another husband. I'm sure those women are out there, but for the most part, we're going to have to rely on ourselves, and we are going to have to rely on the mothers, the women, the mothers, the ones who are literally here down for humanity, Medusa, to help this process along. So cross your fingers, but it is there. It is there, and I suspect women, and specifically the matriarchs of society, are going to have a lot to say about this in terms of moving the thing forward and getting some diplomacy involved, which will be good. We like that. Okay, now the other thing I want you guys to point out, now we know Mars is still in Cancer, but it's moved past Kronos and Hades, right? So it's moving past that. We're good with that. Like, some of the heat is off. But while it's doing that, Mars is moving closer to that Venus in Scorpio. So Mars and Venus are about to shake hands here, which is good. Poseidon is still there. It's a little wide. So again, we're moving past the transneptunians, and now we're just moving exclusively into the planet territory, which is going to be Mars and Venus. So Mars and Venus in trine is going to give us some help, right? They will also be trining again Saturn. Still, they're holding on to that trine. So we've got a grand trine kind of moving out of focus. So any opportunities we had to get it right, we had the week before. And right now we're just kind of finishing up and cleaning up. While this is happening, Hades, because remember, with transneptunians, we've got almond sliver orbs. We've got orbs like literally the width and thickness of your fingernail. So with with Hades and Poseidon in trine with each other, again, this has a lot to do. Well, this is different from before. Hades and Poseidon together suggests that there will be issues with water quality and poisons and underground sewage and things of that nature. Also with Saturn here in almost exact trine to these two, that's not boding well. So we should probably, I'm taking an educated guess. Let's see how it plays out. With Saturn involved in its grand trine with Poseidon and Hades, water quality, water poisoning, underground sewage systems, things that have to do with water, basically, and drains, pipes, underground things. These are things that should be coming up prominently at this time around this quarter moon. And it will be something that we're going to need to address, definitely need to address, because this will be of some urgency, given that Pluto will be stationing direct with the moon, you know, and Jupiter stationing retrograde at the same time, almost a day before and a day after, making a sandwich with that quarter moon. So let's see what happens. So for you at home, keep an eye on your water quality, like coming out of the tap. I know where I live, it just smells like nothing but chlorine. It's bad. I can't drink the tap water here, so I'm literally filtering all my water before I drink or cook with it. So you might want to check the water quality around you just to be on the safe side. Just to be on the safe side. Okay. All right. Now, that's pretty much it. I mean, this is an active week, but not nearly as active as the eclipse week. And now let's look at what's going on the following week. Oh, geez. Did I say the following week? I'm sorry. I got ahead of myself. We're still on this week. It is it is, in fact, a very active week, but it's all under the surface. So things that are notable this week with this quarter moon, before I get to next week, here's some things I want you guys to take a look at. So Mars will be conjunct the fixed stars. Come back here, little one. There we go. We'll be conjuncting Wasat, Propus, and Castor. Wasat has to do with poisons and also gas poisoning, right? Gases and gas poisoning. So Mars there does not bode well. And Mars in Cancer conjunct Wasat, Propus, and Cancer. And also because Mars is still in square to that sun, suggests there may be some structural cracks in the boundaries, the shells that keep these things separated from us. So remember, Cancer is an animal that is protected by its shell. Hermit crabs, eating crabs, whatever kind of crab you're talking about, it's got a hard shell that protects its soft insides from the outside environment. This Sun-Mars square like this, especially the fixed stars Wasat, Propus, and Cancer, indicates that there may be some cracks in structures. So nuclear power plants could be an issue, gas plants, whatever they're called, factories, I don't know, Anything that produces chemicals, poisonous gases, or poisons, right? And nuclear radiation is definitely a poison. All of these things, the structural walls that protect it and keep it contained and keep what's inside completely separated from what's outside, may be looking at some structural issues like cracks, in the dam or cracks in the walls, that sort of stuff. So that's pretty scary, and we want to keep an eye on that. Castor, by the way, is not a happy fixed star. Castor and Pollux both they're the twin stars. Pollux worse than Castor. So Castor's not great, but it's not awful either. There is some opportunity with Castor to fix whatever this is that we're looking at. Okay, so again, let's keep an eye on it. And for those of you who work in those types of environments, like definitely, if you see something, say something. Okay, Jupiter at this time will also be conjunct many fixed stars in Gemini, but the most prominent one, excuse me, is going to be Bellatrix. Bellatrix, or Bellatrix, depending on how you pronounce it, is a warrior goddess. Bellatrix is a baddie, honey. She is such a baddie. So when we talk about Medusa and Algol in the previous slides, and this female energy coming to the forefront to help make things right, because we have to rise up into our Medusa energy. We have to rise up into our Bellatrix energy. We have to be the goddess that champions and protects. Jupiter's just gone retrograde. It's not going to give it to us. We've got to do this for ourselves. So with Jupiter conjunct Bellatrix, among the many fixed stars that it's going to conjunct as it travels through this section of Gemini, one of the things that it's called to action is a call to action to rise up and be the warrior goddess and to stand up for what's right, okay, and to stand up in the protection and championship of other women. All right, and this does not mean, by the way, for those who are a little confused, this does not mean being a handmaiden, right? And, determining that the only women worth protecting are the women who are virtue, like myself. No, that's not what it is. This is not about rising up and being vulgar and coarse and gross like an overgrown adolescent boy, except you got boobs and ovaries. That's not what it's about either. Okay? It's about rising up to the challenge of being the best possible version of womanhood that you can be, that champions and protects all women and all daughters and all children. Because you're going to have to do it, and Jupiter's retrograde, so we're going to have to do it for ourselves. So don't be afraid to speak up. Don't be afraid to stand on your principles. And for the love of God, don't be afraid to include all women, even if they are different from you. Because at the end of the day, our ability to choose is what makes us humans. We can choose how we respond to things. We're not victims of our animal natures. And what that also means is that choice is a very real and spiritual thing that we should all be embracing and allowing other people to have. So if you're a pick-me, or you're male aligned, or you're like one of these obnoxious, delusional trad wives, because you clearly don't know your history, lady, you're not helping the cause. You're not helping the cause. This is not the time to placate and, genuflect at the feet of men because men will protect you. This is not what this is about. This is also not about going to war with men. This is about taking your place alongside men and leading the way to proper, healthy directions. For the love of God, we've got to stop killing our women and children. We've got to stop. Nobody's going to do it for you, sisters. You got to stand up and stand on principle, and you've got to start saying enough is enough. All right. Now, also at this time, all these things quietly bubbling in the background, Mercury. Dun, 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 dun. Mercury will not only be conjunct Zeus, but it will also be conjunct Spica and Arcturus. Now remember, we said that the quarter moon involved Vindemiatrix. Sorry, my handwriting's not great with this thing. Vindemiatrix, which is a business sign, okay? Vindemiatrix is a business, or it's a fixed star. It's a fixed star, but it has to do with business, right? Spica and Arcturus has to do with wealth, money, success, luck, all those beautiful things that put coins in your pocket. These three together, the the quarter moon involving Vindemiatrix with Mercury finally moving out from combustion with the sun into conjunction with Spica and Arcturus, suggests that this is a winner-take-all week. There's something going on here that has a lot to do with profit, business profit. Which is fine. I mean, everybody should, get rewards for their good work. But I'm afraid that this may be getting rewards for not good things. So keep an eye on that, and remember, stand on your principle and speak up. Don't let things slide and assume that the powers that be are going to protect you, because they're not. Everybody's very selfish these days, and if you haven't seen that, I don't know what planet you're living on, but that's where we're at. So make sure you hold people accountable. Accountable, right? Don't let them take all the gold and coin at your expense and labor, and walk away with it. Interesting enough, right now in the United States, the ports, the people in the ports are striking, which I thought was interesting. It's that Pisces is water and ports, right? And people from many cultures and nationalities, which you're going to see in a port. And it's about accountability and transparency, and that's exactly what these guys are doing down at the ports with a strike. I thought that was great. Okay, so we may see some conversations about that or something specific to that coming up, because again, business, right? At the time of this quarter moon. The moon will be conjunct Vega, which is also, it's at 16 Capricorn, right? Which is also a business fixed star. Holy crap. And Pluto will be conjunct Albareo. Now, Vega and Albareo also are specific to ambition, like excessive ambition. So one of the things that I would look at, given everything we've been seeing here, right, is somebody somewhere way up on top of the food chain. This is all about naked ambition and trying to get all the gold for themselves, no matter how they do it or who it hurts in the process, because that apparently seems to be the theme of this year and the last 20. So keep an eye on that. Don't let them get away with this. Don't let them get away with this, and don't believe everything you hear, especially if it's trying to demean, demoralize, denounce, or make it look bad the people at the bottom who are suffering the most, right? Free Palestine. Okay, next one. And this is the WAPA. This is the big daddy of the month. So this is the full moon at 24 Aries. It will be occurring on October 17th, 2024. Things that are notable, many things are notable about this particular full moon. So the first thing is the full moon occurs on the 17th, and it is also being sandwiched by some planetary changes from October 14th, before the full moon, and to October 18th, immediately after the full moon. Mercury and Venus, during this little sliver of time, will be together in Scorpio, and that is important for a reason. We're going to talk about that in a second. Now, this full moons are very active to begin with, and impulsive, but this full moon is involved in a grand cross. Okay, so let me get this out of here. So the grand crosses are challenging enough. They're easier, I think, to deal with than T-squares, but I guess it depends on what job you're trying to finish or do with this particular aspect, right? So the grand cross here will involve the sun and moon, obviously, because it's a full moon, but also Mars and Pluto. Woo, Mars and Pluto. So Pluto, we know, has just station direct, so Pluto is full steam ahead. This is it. We are moving, right? Moving. This is the end of the line. And so if it were just the T-square, okay, where we were just looking at this, that would be scary enough, right? Because that means that all this full moon energy is being pushed through, and certainly focused by, we're adjusting the lens of the camera, focused by that Pluto, which is 29 degrees and station direct and moving forward, taking no prisoners. That's that Pluto at 29 Capricorn direct right now. That's pretty terrifying. And I'm not saying any of this to terrify you. Also, too, remember the sun is still here with Zeus, right? Kings and kingmakers, and with Juno, community and wives and women. So there's definitely something going on here. Now, at this time, Zeus, Juno are both combust the sun, or not combust. They're cazimi the sun. They're in the heart of the sun. So there are people who are in positions to have the ear of the king that can make a huge difference in terms of how this impacts their communities. So if by any chance you know somebody who's like this, or you are that person in your own community or tribe, or like, I don't know, maybe you're some, high level executive that just happens to like astrology and accidentally found my channel. You're the wife of somebody. This full moon, you're absolutely going to have the ear of the king, and this is an important, potent time to bend the ear of the king in a way that protects and benefits everyone, not hurts people, because he will be listening, or she if it's a queen. Okay, So there's that, right? So let's go over some of this markings. Now, because it's a Grand Cross, this now involves Mars. And here is where it gets really scary. Mars will be conjunct the fixed star Pollux. Now remember we said Castor previously is the twin brother of Pollux, and Castor is the nice one. Pollux is known as the boxer or the fighter, the fighting twin, the barroom brawling twin. Pollux is the mischief maker, and Pollux loves bar fights. Oh my God. Yeah. And Pollux will be opposing Pluto as part of this full moon, as part of this Grand Cross. While the sun is conjunct Zeus, or the king or queen, and the kingmaker, queenmaker. So what this suggests, unfortunately, is that people at the very, very highest levels of the lands, right, the kings and royalty among us, in different organizations and structures, anything involved in hierarchy, are going to be fighting mad, ready to fight, ready to throw down and fight. This is it. Winner takes all, baby. So the thing that I'm seeing with this is that there's almost this competitive thing that's been building up to this point, right? It's literally, I hate to say it, but it's like a contest or a competition. It's like a game for them. I could be wrong. So right now, when we get to the full moon, this is like a winner takes all event. Okay, so literally all the chips are pushed like a poker game. All the chips are being pushed in the center of the table. This is it, last hand, all or nothing at all. Ugh, don't like it. Don't like it at all. So this is the feeling that we're getting around this full moon, trying not to get sucked into it. Again, mass consciousness, mass consciousness, mass consciousness. This is the problem in front of us. Focus on the smooth road on the other side of the problem. Focus on the other side of the problem, the outcome we want to see, not the problem directly in front of us. And of course, because the sun continues to be conjunct Spica and Arcturus, as well as Zeus, we also know, again, it's all about business. This is about money and business. This is not about high-minded principles. There's something going on here with the kings or queens, right? The royalty at the top of any hierarchy. There's something going on with them that this has now become a competition or a contest, winner takes all. And this is going to be the hand they play to try and push this thing to a close so that they can win, quote unquote, the game. Yikes. So in your personal life, be aware that the tensions are going to run high everywhere, because even if we don't know what's going on and we can't see it and we're not feeling it, well, we're feeling it. We're still feeling it. We don't know what's happening. It's like when a storm is coming in, you can feel the storm coming long before you actually get the storm. So we're feeling it. So our tensions are going to run high across the board at all levels. So be kind to each other. And understand that aggressive action is going to be met by tremendous amounts of pushback, right? Lots of push. This is not a fun full moon, not a fun full moon. And remember, Uranus remains conjunct the fixed star Algol, making people a little less reasonable and rational than usual. So heed my warning and tread lightly if you can. And now, ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of the month and the last lunation, which will be the quarter moon at 1 Leo, occurring on October 24th, 2024. Now, this particular quarter moon is going to be a little anticlimactic compared to the full moon, but no less potent and tense. And I'm sorry to bring you all this this feedback and communication about this being a really tense, month, but it will be. And the more you know, the better you are to prepare, better able you are to prepare for these things. So with this particular quarter moon, what is notable, there are a couple of things notable about it. The first thing is that again, we've gone from a grand cross back to a T-square. So this T-square will involve the sun and moon, obviously, because it's a quarter moon, and the moon will be near Mars. Zoinks, which will be uncomfortable. So Mars is not exactly on the moon, but Mars is in the sign that the moon rules. So it's like your neighbor coming in your house, sort of thing, or in your yard, not in your house, but in your yard. So your neighbor's in your yard this month, and he's not got the best intentions, right? And all of these are involved in squares and oppositions to Pluto, which we've been discussing ad infinitum so far. So yeah, not a happy-go-lucky, Polish polka here. Okay, So where do we start? Where do we start? All right, so let's start with the problematic parts. So this T-square, again, everything in a T-square comes through the leg, and the leg of the T-square here is going to be, hold the magic pen, is going to be here. So all this energy, right, between this Pluto and that moon Mars is going to be coming through the sun by the end of the month. Now the sun, of course, represents leadership and men, but for all intents and purposes, I would go with just leadership as a rule, not necessarily gender-based. So people in positions of authority and leadership will be the people on, standing, hovering over the third rail, as it were, and on the ropes, in terms of what are you going to do, what are you going to do, what are you going to do. So there's going to be a whole lot of pressure put on leadership in any organization, or at a macro level, meaning nations, countries, governments, to a micro level, meaning literally your household, your family, whoever's in charge of the group that you reside with, your job, your team. So the leadership and the authority will be the people who are on the ropes and are being forced to do something, damn it, to fix or correct situations, right? Because we just came through a pretty gnarly full moon and we're all feeling still a little bruised and battered from it. And now we've had a little while to kind of get in here in like a little over 10 days or under 10 days. We've had about a week to kind of regroup, reconsider, look at the damage and figure out how we're going to fix this. So if you're in a position of leadership in some capacity, you should know you will be on the ropes and they will be expecting you to help guide the way out of this resulting mess. Understand that at this time, decisions made for the good of everyone involved in the group, or as the representative of any group, decisions made at this time are going to have very long-term consequences. So with that in mind, think clearly, think long-term, think twice, and really ask yourself if you've considered every possible alternative in terms of solution finding for whatever is put on your plate right now. Do not, I repeat, do not make impulsive, rash, or angry decisions, because they will absolutely be the wrong ones. And the problem is long-term ramifications. This is whatever decisions are made now are going to have a long-term impact. So just, check yourself on those impulse things, right? Now, when we talk about not making decisions in anger and things of that nature, it's very important to understand that this quarter moon is involving Procyon. All right, Procyon is the not great twin of Castor. Or no, I'm sorry, that was Pollux. Oh, forgive me. Procyon is, again, another fixed star that has a lot to do with violence and in this case, believe it or not, dog bites. Wild or feral dog bites, things of that nature. So literally, it may be that your servants come back to bite you, right? Servants out of control, employees out of control, underlings out of control may bite the hand that feed them. Anger, violence, all that sort of stuff, all the stuff we've just been through with this full moon, like we're still dealing with it right now, but this time it may be more focused. So be very aware of your surroundings and the people that you're dealing with, and also, again, try not to make rash or angry decisions because they will be the wrong ones, always. At the same time, Mars, which is part of this T-square, is also in the antecedent of the transneptunian Admetos. Now, Admetos has to do with things that come to a standstill, roadblocks, stoppages, blockages. Admetos in certain positions in the natal chart can point to heart attacks. Like, what's his face down in Florida, Death Santos, who mysteriously disappeared for a couple of weeks, but said that it was because his wife was sick, which we all know is a blatant lie. Using his wife, like some of the other senators used their wives to shield them and give a cover story. But I really think DeSantis had some issues with his heart around this time because Admetos was involved in his chart. But anyway, back to this quarter moon, Mars conjunct Procyon and antecedent Admetos as part of this T-square also suggests that we may find ourselves coming to an impasse. I-M-P-A-S-S-E, impasse. Great word, look it up. Where we are literally forced to reconsider how we're going to do this, because as it appears on the surface, the only way through the problem or the obstacle may be head first, literally pile driving through it. That's not going to be the answer or the ideal or optimal solution, but it certainly will feel that way. So we want to keep an eye on that and make sure that we're not letting this pressure and all the fallout from the full moon previously drive our decisions into rash, stupid decisions where we're using way too much force and ended up making more of a mess. While this is happening, we also have Uranus conjunct Algol, obviously, because that's been going on all month long, as well as Vulcanus. So the T-square, right? Get rid of all this. This T-square involving the moon and Mars, right? Because we've got this T-square here, right? This moon-Mars will also be down there. It's Anticia Admetos, but it's also going to set up, oh, sorry, it's also going to involve Vulcanus. Vulcanus is right here. Get rid of this for you. Vulcanus is right here, okay? And the moon there with its T-square will simultaneously be activating the Uranus-Algol conjunction as well as Vulcanus. So again, Vulcanus, might, strength, force. We got to be careful with that. It's kind of wide. Remember, I like little tiny orbs with those transneptunians, but it is involving the moon, and the moon is connecting to that Uranus-Algol conjunction. This again brings forth suggestions and pictures of force, violence, right? Things coming to just literally a complete absolute standstill, loggerheads, things coming head to head, butting sort of stuff, conflict. This is not the happiest, none of these lunations are fantastic. This is not one of the happier ones. So again, we got to watch that because tensions are going to be running high all month long, especially around the full moon. We're not going to get any relief from it as we get down closer to the end of the month. In fact, this will be much more specific and singular in activity. So this may not cut across broad swaths of people or groups. It may be very specific players or individuals that are going to lose their ever-loving, you know what, much to the detriment of the people around them, or very specific, because this is all targeted. This lunation, this is very, very targeted. Don't know what that's about, but we're going to find out. All right, now, the upside, because you need some fresh air and some sunshine while we're dealing with this, the upside that's occurring during this quarter moon is, again, Zeus and Juno are together, so women and wives have the ear of the king, okay? And not as much as they did previously, but it's still there, and there's a lot of power. There's a lot of power in spouses, support spouses, not the ones who are active in the world, but the ones who are the supporting partner in the relationship. Support spouses, as well as people whose jobs are dedicated to the betterment and protection of the community. These are the people who are holding a lot of power right now, a lot of aces in their hand if you're a card player. So they're in a really strong position, and we're going to need them to do what they do and do best, no matter what is going on. Now, the thing about it is, these community leaders, these supportive spouses, the people, the power behind the scenes that are there for the protection and betterment of everyone else around them, takes this square to Procyon, right? And of course, by connection, Admetos. So the thing about it is, they're going to get a lot of pushback. If you are one of these people that's involved in the protection and doing things that are actively benefiting the community or should benefit the community, you're looking out for the big picture. If you are one of these supportive spouses that is the ear of the king, if you are like this, Zeus and Juno right now absolutely describes progressives and liberals at this time. You guys have a lot of power you may not realize, but because you have so much power, whether you recognize it or not, you're going to be getting a lot of pushback from specific individuals who are ready to throw down and fight. Because again, right now, it's about clawing back what the old world order thinks belongs to them, right? And you are definitely, as far as they're concerned, part of the problem. So expect pushback and resistance. Be very aware of your surroundings and the people that you're dealing with. People are not in the right mind all month long. Tension levels are high. And we're all feeling it because it's kind of like those electric fences. Even though you're not touching the fence, you can hear that hum. You can hear that electrical power surging through those wires. You can hear it. And if you're close enough, you can actually start to feel it before you ever touch that thing. This is what we're dealing with all month long, that level of high tension activity down the lines. So you got power, make sure you're using it, but also understand you're going to be getting a ton of pushback from, people who literally want to fight you on this because they cannot afford to let you have one single inch of forward motion because you have that much power and you're a direct threat to the thing that they're trying to keep away from everybody else. Not them, just the rest of us. All right. Now, at the same time, Mercury has now moved into conjunction with Poseidon at this time. Remember, Poseidon has to do, it's like the higher octave of Neptune. It's all the good sides of Neptune, like any of the downside or hangovers. So Mercury with Poseidon absolutely gives us an opportunity to have our third eye opened, right? Or your spiritual heart opened, whatever it is that you call it, your ability to see the higher good, the higher order, right? The higher vibration, essential at the heart of the matter. Your ability to see that would be very clear. We're all going to be on the same page with this. Many of us will be on the same page with this in terms of being able to see what really is right and true and good and where we need to go and what needs to be done. And most importantly, because Poseidon is about clarity and Mercury is about the thinking mind, we will have an opportunity to be very, very clear in our thinking as a group. So we'll all understand what's really at stake here and what's been happening. That in and of itself is a beautiful thing. Communication and information is power. That's why education and knowledge is so powerful. So at this time, by the time we get this quarter moon and all this, nonsense going on with people pushing, right, for a fight, literally spoiling for a fight to put the last threats to their determination to claw back what's left of the control and power that they're losing. We all need to be able to see what's actually going on so we understand who the real players are and what's at stake. And we're going to have that together in unison around October 24th. So that's a good thing. Okay. And finally, what I would give you for this month, Venus has moved into Sagittarius, which is a bit of relief. We like that. Venus is in Sagittarius. It will be making a trine to the moon. That's part of this quarter moon. It will, give me a second thinking. I'm literally thinking as I do this. That moon trine Venus is going to give us a lot of hope and optimism and a lot of heartfelt intention. So there's going to be a lot of people come from a lot of good places when it really comes right down to it. You just have to be able to get past the noise. They can hear what's being said and see who's doing the talking that makes sense and is positive and healthy and healing, not this toxic, negative, just toilet bowl of crap we've been dealing with for the last 10 years, right? So that's all sliding away, right? It's all being flushed down the drain, but it's still there. It's still noisy. It's still overwhelming. So we have to kind of work on discriminating information and messages and where it's coming from, right? So and we'll be doing that. And with this moon Venus trine, it'll be much easier to feel confident and optimistic and be able to know who to trust, right? For the most part. So hang in there. It's going to be okay. The other thing that's interesting about this month is that, or this particular week, is that Venus and Neptune, because we've got all this Poseidon activity here. Vesta and Neptune are in opposition. Vesta is the Vestal virgins, the holy virgins, the celibate priestesses. Vesta covers a lot of interesting territory, but more specifically, it has a lot to do with rituals and again community, but coming from it from a very organized, disciplined way. So Vesta, and it has to do with the goddess, Vesta and Neptune in opposition is going to highlight that Neptune Pisces evolutionary demand, because Neptune again is at the last degrees of the last sign of the zodiac. This is our last chance to get it right and turn this corner correctly with as little damage or no damage as possible. So Vesta in opposition to Neptune is calling upon us to tend to the sacred hearth, to think about home, hearth, and family and what's important. And it's not just about our home, hearth, and family. It is about the sanctity of home, hearth, and family, the ability to have homes, the ability for children to have safe havens, the ability to be part of a community where we are all considered extended family and we're all working together towards a common goal, and that common goal being a safe future where our children can thrive. That is what's also operating this last week and coming to the high point, but it may be a little hard to see or hear because of this, right? Poseideon and all the pugilist, angry bar fight brawlers that are trying to fight us back, right? Get back there, get back there. We want the world the way it used to be. So all month long, honey, all month long. It's a tense month. So understand that about what's going on, and let's figure out how to get through this as safely as possible. Okay, so here's how we're going to navigate the month. If you have not heard about or read about the Maharishi effect, I strongly encourage you to go read about it. It's an experiment that was done with meditation. And mind you, for those of you who don't understand what meditation has nothing to do with religion. It has no religious affiliations. It's not even necessarily a spiritual practice. It can be used for spiritual practices, but it's not. It is simply a tool to help reboot and reset the consciousness in your brain so that you don't go crazy, right? Because periodically, even with your computers and your cars, you got to shut them down once in a while so they can reboot the system. Meditation will do that for you. It has no affiliation or connection to religions. You can use it as a spiritual practice, but ultimately it is a standalone discipline or activity meant to reboot and reset your consciousness so you don't lose your ever-loving mind. So that's that. So if you haven't heard about or read about the Maharishi effect, it was an experiment done in Baltimore, Washington, D.C. many, many years ago. Go look it up. This is an excellent book. I recommend looking that up, or you can find information on the internet about the experiment. So on a personal level, here's what you need to know. How to navigate this month and manifest better outcomes than the ones some people are trying to lead us to. The first is meditate. Meditate. I can't stress this enough. Group mind is a powerful one, so use it for good. Use it because it's available to you and use it for good. I mean, unless you want to be dead because of nuclear explosions, because some wackadoodle decided that their religion and their people and their 144,000 in the tribe are going to get on the special bus and go to heaven, and the rest of us are going to suffer, even if we're not guilty of anything that they're accusing us of, because, meditate, meditate, meditate. 2, focus on the outcome desired while remaining aware of the problem at hand. Don't ignore it. Know that it's there, but focus on where you're trying to go, not the other way around. We don't focus on the problem and just kind of vaguely be aware of where we want to go. We focus on where we're trying to go, and we just remain aware that there's a problem immediately in front of us that we need to navigate around. 3, be kind and patient, both with yourself and with other people, more this month than ever before. The storm is coming, and even those who can't see a storm, they can still feel it, and everyone's reacting to it. Be kind and patient with yourself as well as others all month long. 4, remember, evolution is inevitable. You're not going to avoid it. We must adapt or face extinction. That's what evolution does. Ask the dinosaurs. Going backward is never an option unless you're a time traveler. And even then, if you were a time traveler and you could go backward in time, there are still negative repercussions for going backward. So we can't do it. Adapt or face extinction. 5, we've discussed this before as well. Demons and low vibration energies feed on misery, suffering, and chaos. Don't feed into it. There are people who literally their only purpose and goal in life is to create misery, suffering, and chaos. We know these people. We've worked with these people. We might even, God forbid, have them in our family. All right. And these are people who are living at a very low vibration level, or they're acting as agents for demonic forces, depending on how you want to look at it. But they're toxic and they're not in a good place. And we don't need to feed into that. So anything we do or support that creates an outcome of misery, suffering, or chaos is part of demonic forces or low vibration energy. Netanyahu is the king of misery, suffering, and chaos right now, so I'm pretty sure he is an agent for forces that we don't need more of in this world. He is toxic to the nth degree. And people supporting him are supporting that. I'm just saying. Okay, and finally, most important, remember this. Divine unconditional love is your purpose and your birthright. You may not have gotten it from your parents, you may not have gotten it from people around you, but the universe loves you. And it wants you to feel that love and to express that love. So you may have to work a little harder, climb a little higher. You may have been called on to develop strength and tenacity and character in ways that average people are not. Okay, because you have a special job to do. And all of these things come back to divine unconditional love as your purpose and your birthright. So make the expression and experience of divine unconditional love your active goal in everything you think and do when you can as we go through this month. There is no future without women or children. Stop killing them.